Hi, so I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about the sixth grade science program. So I am Rebecca Newburn, and I'm going to be your child's science teacher this year. I'm teaching all of the science classes for sixth grade for this year. And a little bit about myself, just so you know who your kid is spending so much time with. I originally started my teaching career right after I did my bachelor's in science. And I joined the Peace Corps, and I went and I taught high school math and science for 2.5 years in Fiji. And then right after that, I really loved teaching. And my brother was in Namibia, which had just gotten its independence from South Africa. And he invited me to go there. So then I went and I taught at a high school math and science in Namibia for 3 years. Came back, did a master's in education, and then about a week after that, I came out and did a job interview in Marin County, and I've been in Marin County teaching ever since. Some of the things that interest me is I really am interested in how is science and math education done across different continents and different areas. So I had the opportunity in 1999 to go to Japan for 3 weeks on a Fulbright Memorial Fund, which was really an exceptional opportunity to see what they're doing so well in their communities. And then additionally, I got interested in regenerative agriculture, also known as permaculture, and I've done a couple of certificates in that body of work. Some of my interests are seed saving. I actually have a pretty extensive garden in my own house. And in 2010, I founded a seed lending library, which is in the public library in Richmond. And it has been used as a model. I made it as a replica model, and now there are over 800 seed libraries around the world based on kind of this structure that I created. I've also been involved in protecting the right to save and share seeds in our community. And fortunately, that is, we have been able to change the laws to maintain that seed saving is legal on a community level, which was in risk a few years ago. Additionally, I am a community emergency response team trainer. Some of you may know the program CERT. It's a FEMA program. So I'm a trainer in the city of Richmond, but I also bring that into the classroom as well. Additionally, I created a program called 2 Steps a Month to Disaster Preparedness, which is a way that communities can come together and share resources as they create their own individual family program, but then also doing it in the context of a larger community. And I think in 2017, as part of KQED, we were doing a pilot program in the sixth grade around plastic reduction. And I developed kind of an add-on piece to that project where the students actually monitored their single-use plastics. And we've been doing that in the district ever since. And so 6th, 7th, and 8th grade do a zero waste challenge. The sixth grade focus is on single-use plastic. So be looking forward to getting some information about that in the beginning of October. I want to talk a little bit about science and how it's radically different from probably when you went to school. Now, when I went to school and I did science, we were really focused on the content. So, what is a volcano? Why do they erupt? But the new standards, or the next generation science standards, are really complex and rigorous, but they're also a lot more exciting because of that. So we have in sixth grade, we have engineering. And so you can see engineering is across all grade levels, as is human impact. So how are we as humans impacting our natural world? And then we have the content standards. So those are the things that we would want a student to know, are the core ideas. And those would be the typical things that you studied when you were a student. What is weather? What causes weather? How does weather change? How does climate change? So we'll be studying those concepts: energy, seeds, body systems, in sixth grade. However, we have these layers. It's a three-dimensional standard system. So we've got those ideas, but then what we also have are these things called cross-cutting concepts. And cross-cutting concepts are the glue of science, things such as recognizing patterns, looking at systems. And so a student doesn't just look at weather, but they look at weather through the context of patterns, or they look at in terms of scale. And so those concepts of scale and patterns translate whether you're studying something such as weather or things such as chemistry or space and gravity. So we have these cross-cutting concepts across all grade levels, kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And the third aspect, or the third part of the three-dimensional practices and standards, is the science and engineering practices. So scientists and engineers do specific things such as analyze data, argue from evidence. And what we're doing in the science classroom is we're embedding all three of these pretty much at all times. So it's not just why does a volcano erupt, but we're looking at data and then we're arguing from what do we see. And so it's a lot more combined, and it's also, I think, a lot more interesting from that perspective as well. Now, there isn't a textbook for sixth grade science. So we have these interactive science notebooks, and this includes our notes, it includes our reflections, our data. And as a result, it's a way for students, it's more like a portfolio of their work. And this is a thing that you can ask, your student to show you. And I think you'll really be interested and impressed with the work that they do. And one thing I like about the way we do science at Hall Middle School is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers all have a very similar structure. We all use the interactive science notebook. We all have these similar resources in the front and in the appendix. And as a result, we're able to build understanding and metacognition over time. And that really supports students in the long term in terms of becoming deep thinkers and aware of their own thinking process and being able to communicate effectively. And this book needs to be brought to school every day. Now, in the front of the notebook, these are the resources I was talking about that you would see whether your child is in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. So we have these front resources, things, we just have some rubrics, but we also have things such as claim evidence reasons. So you often hear your kids saying, like, I've got a CER due. And so we tend not to do our labs are kind of refocused into these new standards, and they're called claim evidence reasons. So that's the structure that we use for investigations. We're really interested in embedding academic conversation and academic language. So there are some standards and some sentence starters that we use. We do a lot of modeling. So there's support here in terms of what we expect from models. Additionally, there's a lot of readings in science, and we're expecting students not just to read, but to engage in text. We have a talk to the text rubric, which says, when you read, you're annotating the title, you're asking questions. We use a lot of color coding in the science department, and that's a way for us to easily communicate, as well as, I'm able to walk around and see, do they have science vocabulary words are always in orange? So are they using the particular word that I'm expecting them to in this particular context? And so it's a way for us to kind of quickly see, are they able to use the vocabulary? Are they using the data they need to? Because we have this particular structure with color and with form that we do. And then in the back, we have these appendix resources. As I mentioned, those cross-cutting concepts such as patterns and systems. Those are all linked there, as well as the science and engineering practice. We want to really be developing vocabulary and the ability to communicate effectively. So we have the collaborative sentence starters. And then science is just such a great way in which to introduce the concept of prefixes and suffixes and word roots. So we have a number of those listed in the back as we develop our science vocabulary. And then hopefully those students, the students can take that information and translate it into other subjects as well. Now, we have a couple of units this year. The first unit we're doing is the thermal energy unit, also called the tiny house unit. So each time we have a new unit, we have a big aha or question that we're working towards. We also have often an engineering task, something that we're doing that deals with that human impact piece. And so in the first unit, their summative task that they're working towards is that they're a team of architects, and they need to design a home to maximize thermal efficiency. So as a group, they're going to build a house that's less than 12 inches tall. They get a little heat lamp, and then we have an infrared camera that we can see how is heat being conserved or escaping from the house, and then they insulate, and then they're basically using all of what we learned through the unit and then they build this house, and then they use that in order to explain their thinking and what they see. So this is kind of the structure that we have for our units, and that's similar 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Now you'll also hear your kid talking about the big aha page. And so the big aha is the question that we're working to. Once again, here, this is from a different unit, but basically they have a big aha question, and then they're using their resources to answer that question. On page 16, this is how this relates to this overarching question about how can your home minimize energy loss. On page 35, this is how this relates to how your home can minimize energy loss. So we're kind of weaving these together on this page. And then once again, it's called an interactive science notebook. So we're really expecting students to interact with the content. This is using color. We have specific colors that we're asking them to use, but then also writing questions, revising their thinking, adding additional drawings, creating graphs. These are all ways that they can interact with the notebook and the content that they're learning to deepen their understanding. We're using Google Classroom, as are all teachers at Hall. One of the ways that you can support your child is, and I want to say one more thing about the notebook before I move on to Google Classroom, is because we don't have a textbook, we're literally all on the same page. So there's going to be a table of contents, which we call the TOC. And the TOC, if I say turn to page 15, or I say turn to page 45, everybody has something about washers on page 45. It may not be the exact same word for word as someone else because it's our own thoughts and understanding or data, but everyone can look to page 45 for that basic concept or that basic information about washers. And as I mentioned, we are all using Google Classroom, and the slideshows. So I use a weekly slideshow that's linked by week on the Google Classroom. And one of the last slides, so this is the way that you can kind of support your child, is you can look at the last slide or the second to last slide, and it says lesson 1, we did page 45. So you can look, do they have a page 45? Lesson 2, they did an anticipation guide. And you can see it's purple, and purple means that's something that they needed to submit to me on Google Classroom. Page 46, we did a reading. Can you see the reading attached on page 46? And then lesson 4, we did a self-paced lesson on Nearpod. So Nearpod is an interactive tool that's online that we use, just so you're aware of the languaging there. And I just want to give a big shout out to thanks to Spark. They do a lot to support the science program and music, arts, and technology at Hall. A lot of what we do, for example, those infrared cameras that we have that we're going to be using this unit, and the materials to build the tiny houses come from the donations that we get from Spark. So every bit that you can even, donate it and just support the work that we're doing, it's really greatly appreciated. And we just want to thank all the people that are involved in Spark to make our science program and music and art and technology available for our students. So I look forward to getting to know your child more this year. I will be sending out periodically information via email just about upcoming assignments, so you have more of a context about what we're doing in the class. And have a great year. I'm going to have one, and I'm super excited about getting to know your kid.